Good morning or good afternoon. It's Matt Coleman, the co-founder of Magnify World. Our company champions the emerging technology space, and in particular, augmented reality and virtual reality and the future of innovation. Today, we have a very special guest from San Francisco, Greg Castle, who's the managing partner of Anorak Ventures. He's got a very interesting background about how he got into the industry, but now how he's an investor. So we're all ears. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for having you here, and we'd love to hear your story.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here, Matt. I have always been passionate about technology and science fiction. I think as many people in the field have been, I have been inspired by growing up on shows like Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that. I studied business in school and at University of Maryland, and then after school I went into sales and marketing, and then I was actually in the food business for a little while. But I was always deeply interested in what was going on in the field of technology. Since college, I always had I had a very close friend who went that route and went kind of full steam ahead into technology, specifically game development, and I was always picking his brain and hearing what he was doing and fascinated by what was going on, what Epic was doing with their Unreal Engine, what Crytek was doing with their engine, what Sony was doing with the Frostbite engine. And that was always just, a topic of conversation. I love learning about new things. When I left the restaurant industry in 2010, my friend had a position available at his company, which was in marketing. And so I joined him and learned everything I could about the gaming industry. I think I love kind of getting under the hood of these different kind of subcultures and areas, whether or not it's comic books or martial arts or technology, whatever it is. If there's if there's a core group of incredibly passionate people, I want to learn about who they are, what makes them tick, why are they so passionate about this area. And so in 2010, I had the opportunity to join a company that was a video game technology company and really just get under the hood and learn everything I could about the field of 3D graphics and game development. Truth be told, it was 2 years of just immersive knowledge and learning everything I could. And it was really right place, right time, because that team that I was working with actually went on to found Oculus. And so I had the opportunity to kind of get a front row seat to that and also invest in that company. But also the foundational technology of game development is really providing a whole bunch of the underpinnings of these areas of kind of emerging technology that are really blowing up. Areas like robotics and autonomous driving, and of course AR, VR. A lot of this kind of 3D reconstruction technology stems from game development. So, it was really a case of right place, right time for me to be able to kind of make a career out of it, which is what I've done.
Oh, fantastic. Having a look at your portfolio, I think we discussed last time we chatted around, 30 or 40% the companies you invest in so far have been maybe AR and VR or mixed reality companies. Would that be right? And,
yes.
And can you give us an example or a couple of examples? I know there's some medical applications, some gaming applications, even using AI. Maybe can you give us a bit of insights into some of the companies that you've been working with?
Sure. So I think, one of the most powerful and unique parts of virtual reality is the ability to provide immersive experiences and make you really feel like you're there. And that's a really cool thing if you are into gaming and you really want to feel like you're on another planet. You really want to feel like you're kind of escaped to some foreign land. But it's also incredibly powerful and impactful when you're trying to learn new skills. And so, for example, one of my investments is in a company called Oso VR, which is doing surgical training. And so, reading a manual on what it's like to use a particular medical device, let's say a screw that's used for knee surgery. Seeing that in a manual and watching a video on it and different things like that is great, but it's linear and it's one way. If you have the ability to actually, be in the environment and, see what it's like to work with this particular object, get a feel for the size, get a feel for exactly where it goes, and actually work in 3D. There have been so many different studies that have shown that actually doing is the best way of learning. And so, I think I'm certainly excited for the future of entertainment when it comes to virtual reality, but I'm also incredibly excited about the enterprise applications. And so those include things like OSO. They include an HR training company that I'm involved in called Vantage Point that really gives you a sense. It's basically for sexual harassment and gender bias training. So what does it really feel like to be in a situation where there are people around you who are looking inappropriately at you or making comments inappropriately, and really kind of being able to internalize as a white male, I don't know what it feels like to be objectified or to be looked at a certain way. But it is incredibly impactful if I go into VR and I feel what it's like to experience some of these things. And it is going to make, I think, anyone think twice about comments that perhaps previously they didn't think were that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So, there is that. There's another company I'm invested in called Insight VR, which is doing architecture and building kind of visualization. So, when you're rather than looking at 2D plans for what a building is going to look like, actually being able to teleport inside that building and look around and perhaps identify problems before they arise. Arthur VR is an app that's for kind of meeting together in VR for productivity purposes. They're coming out with their release, I believe, next week or the week after on Oculus Quest, which I think is going to be really big.
Just have a question on that. We've been doing a bit of research and interviews around virtual environments and, the alt spaces or the VR chats of the world. And this leads me to an interesting question is, from a live perspective in the entertainment business, you would like 100,000 people to log in here, right? But from a logistical perspective and a manufacturing level with headsets, when do you think, you could have hundreds or thousands of people in these chat rooms collaborating in the future? Is the technology coming soon? Because I know there's some limitations on the amount of people you can have in these rooms. Obviously, if it's a boardroom, it's no problem, or a virtual concert which might have 50 or 100 people in it. But do you have many insights into where that's going?
Yeah. So I would point out two things. One, gathering 100,000 people in real life to have a productive meeting isn't possible. In VR, you have some additional benefits of being able to have complete control over your environment and conversation. And so there is more of a chance of that, but there's still inherent, there's just inherent characteristics of communication as humans do it that mean that massive simultaneous communication has inherent challenges. But again, I do think when you have complete control over the environment, you have the ability to do some neat things to make it potentially more productive. The challenges, the other challenges that you mentioned, so hardware is certainly a challenge. Even with the existing Quest, it is, miles better. From my point of view, it's still not super comfortable to be in for long periods of time.
What What do you
And
call a long
last,
period of time, by the way? Is it more than 3 hours or more than 1 hour?
for me, I
Or...
start to get a little antsy after about 45 minutes,
Yeah,
but everybody's different.
yeah,
Everybody has different
yeah.
tolerances. And lastly, the point that you mentioned, which I think is a very interesting one, is persistent realities with loads of people in them, that where the infrastructure can handle that many people and that much communication. There are a couple of different companies. I think there's actually two of them out of England that are working on how to scale up gaming networks and gaming matches to very large scales. So I think that will be a problem that is solved. But yeah, the whole kind of networking infrastructure of what is happening with as people are working from home, as bandwidth requirements are increasing, as more people want to get into the same space together. All those challenges are challenges that I'm incredibly fascinated with as well. And I actually have an investment in the space that's helping with that whole challenge as well. In terms of kind of what's going on with the move to work from home, and how to ensure that people are productive, there's so many different levels of it, right? There's like, if you look at it from a networking chart, there's level 7, which is the end application. And then there's all the way down to kind of level 1 and 2, which is kind of the core networking infrastructure that needs to be upgraded to handle what's going on. And there's innovation happening all along the stack, all of which I'm looking at.
Fantastic. And how does AI come into this? I know you've got a couple of AI investments, and is it public knowledge about 6D at this stage on what's happening with that operation?
Yes, I believe that it was announced publicly. Yeah, it definitely was. So the company you're referring to, 6D.ai, is a company that I was invested in, which was solving one of the critical problems, kind of digital persistence, immersive technology, which was, how do we help devices be aware of what's going on in the world around them? So how do we help a phone know where it is in 3D space, identify different things in 3D space, including perhaps other people? And so that's kind of a core problem that needs to be solved if we're thinking about 5-10 years from now, when we all have AR glasses on, and we want to be able to walk around the world and identify objects and be kind of spatially aware. So they were solving that problem, and they were acquired by Niantic, who really is kind of leading the charge in many ways towards kind of an AR future. They're building a lot of the pieces. They're not building the hardware, of course, but they're building a lot of the core components, and also getting people. Obviously, Pokemon Go is a massive hit, and starting to get people used to what it would be like to play games in reality.
Actually, what I have heard from Pokemon, there's a new version out, and you don't need to go outside. It's actually homebound. I don't know whether you've heard about this. I actually have played Pokemon, I must admit. And
so did I when it first came out.
My children are a lot younger. Maybe I did it because I'm in the industry and I had to check it out.
That's what you tell yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't very successful. Although I did hear a lot of people walking off cliffs and everything and hurting themselves. So that's another story for another day, right, with Pokemon. But there is a version that you can play in the house because of COVID. Now, I encourage anybody to Google it, but I haven't played it, but I hear it's available. But I also heard that I didn't play the Harry Potter project that they had. Do you know much about that and the experience? Putting you on the spot.
Unfortunately, I don't know much about the experience, and I don't I don't have a lot of information. I don't want to speculate, but it didn't seem like it got the same amount of
No. Well, that's why we were both talking to each other, going, "Well, what happened?" I didn't know either. But let's go back to the industry at large here. 5 years ago, when we started Magnify World, it was a $250 billion new market. Virtual reality was going to be the biggest thing. The new Internet 3.0, augmented reality was, going to track that down as well. We put on our first conference and we accidentally got 1,200 people. We had to move it to a museum, and I was expecting 200. In fact, might have been 50 people when we first thought of the idea. This happened in 6 weeks. The media went crazy. That's what I'm saying. Speculation's crazy. It's been reforecast, by many different companies and research companies. DigiCapital is, a very good researcher, I think, in California or Silicon Valley, that's revised some of their forecasts down to maybe 100 billion, or actually lower, I think it was. But what are your insights into the previous excitement of the industry and now where it's going? There's obviously been a consolidation, but what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, it's not the first time that that media has hyped up something that's fallen on its face. The media has got to sell. They've got to sell stories. They've got to sell, interest and excitement. That's exactly what happened. And it was all kind of kicked off by a very large number that Facebook paid for Oculus. And a lot of very smart people who are very excited about what was going on, talking about things. We used to talk about this notion. I mean, I didn't come up with it. It came from Oculus, but this kind of conversion on contact notion of like, if you've never seen anything like this before and you put a headset on somebody, it's very easy to get them incredibly excited about what the potential of this technology is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were incredibly excited about it. I think it will get there. It's just not going to get there as fast as we all thought, as fast as I think the media was talking about. But I think if you spoke to any of the original founders of Oculus, or you spoke to anybody who is really in the know about what it takes to manufacture these things, where the hardware is today, I think everybody would have given projections that were much more accurate than these people who are on the outside selling stories.
Yeah,
it's incredibly hard to manufacture headsets. It's incredibly hard to manufacture headsets. Very little margins. It's just not it's not in demand as much as mobile phones are, because there isn't as much you can do with them. There's a lot more friction to getting in a headset. I think with phones, there wasn't that much friction to getting into it. It was something that everybody already had. And so the pace of innovation was incredibly quick. There also wasn't the sensitivity. People went from, Motorola flip phones to the iPhone, and it wasn't that much of a difference. Here you're talking about, for the first time, really ever, asking massive amounts of people to put electronics on their head. So there was a tremendous amount of friction there that meant that the numbers were going to take time to get there. And when the numbers are relatively low, the innovation on the hardware is going to take time. That's exactly what we're seeing. So I think we're getting there. There aren't as many people as I would like to see working on it. Microsoft, I think, has kind of been hot and cold on the topic. Although, has been doing really well with HoloLens, and I really, commend them for pushing that forward. HTC, it's, difficult. I don't really know whether or not they're well capitalized enough to really produce these things at mass. And really, we're left with one company whose shoulders it falls on to innovate and continue to push the market forward. And in a situation like that, the consumer doesn't win, where you basically have one company that's really, it all falls on.
Yeah. Well, it may change with, mixed reality or, smart glasses. I mean, there's obviously a rise in the development of the early smart glass. When I say early, well, it's not Google Glass, if you know what I mean. That was probably early. But, Nreal, is an interesting project. The insights that some people are talking about from Apple with their possible release next year, which could be 4K or even 8K high quality. I don't know how far that's going to get, but wouldn't you love to see that?
It all falls on Apple. As far as I'm concerned, yes. AR for the masses is all on Apple. As soon as the world is waiting for them to release a product.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been really...
any chance at scale. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, they've been integrating, face masks and all that, added augmented reality functionality to Messenger and things like that, which was really what Snapchat really brought into the market, let's face it, I guess. But Snapchat, their glasses, although it was kind of a gimmick kind of thing, was a good move, I think, but probably too early. But, for the fans of Snapchat, they were lining up down the street, right? It was like a pair of sneakers. So, and of course with COVID, I believe the Snapchat users have risen to about 250 million a day, something like that. It's just exploded. What else in the market are you looking at outside of what we just discussed? I mean, the streaming video market is obviously quite strong. Disney Plus just announced that they've signed, I think, 60 million users in a matter of 9 months, which is pretty astonishing, and they're on target for 100 million. Really, that could be the future of Disney when you consider what's going on with Disneyland parks, which is, a lot of their revenue as well. What are you seeing in the streaming market? Is there any interesting, is it all about content? Is it about virtual production? The Hollywood movie industry is moving into gaming engine development for productions like Mandalorian. What are your thoughts on all of that?
So a couple of things. One is I just want to touch on what you were talking about beforehand with glasses. And I just want to say, for whatever it's worth, it takes a lot of time to gain expertise in hardware. And I really, really respect Google for putting out Google Glass, Snapchat for putting out their glasses, and any of the other big companies who are dipping their toe into it, because it's all uncharted territory in terms of putting computers on your face. Many of the times it's uncharted territory in terms of producing the hardware. And even, people look at Google Glass and they call it a big failure, but I don't think it was. I think Google learned a ton on that exercise. And I really respect them for having the courage to get a product out there and learn from it. So anyway, just to say that.
No, I'm glad you said that. I'm a massive fan of smart glasses, and I actually wrote an article for the CIO magazine in Asia Pacific about 3 years ago on that point. And I've been meaning to actually readjust what's happening today with what I said 3 years ago, because I was probably completely wrong. But having said that, I'm saying I'm wrong in regards to the penetration. Because when you said 5 or 10 years ago, 5 or 10 years away, which you're probably right, let's face it, I would like that to be 2 years. But go on, yeah.
To your other point around production and streaming. So I think, yes, production is an incredibly interesting area. As we, COVID has certainly made it more difficult to move around. We also have become a society that we're starting to just burn through content, right? And I don't know, and I don't think, I wonder what's going to happen with the blockbusters of yesteryear that cost, $100 million to make.
Yeah.
If I'm not, if they don't have the ability to, if this is kind of the end of theaters as we knew it, and more and more companies start pushing, either through subscription services or kind of direct to consumer through the Apple Play Store or whatever. I think studios are going to take much harder looks at how they're producing content and the costs. And one of the answers, look, everybody loves, special effects and things like that. One of the answers potentially is technology, and turning to things like virtual sets. And so I'm incredibly excited about that. I think that is going to change the way movies are produced. I also think that I'm also super excited about interactive home entertainment, not in the sense of video games, although I'm very excited about video games, but other things like virtual escape rooms, and like being able to pay for experiences at home where you interact with certain environments, certain people. I have an investment in a company called Adventure Lab, which basically does at-home ticketed experiences where you get to get into environments with live actors who kind of tour you around different experiences. And I'm so excited about that concept and where that's going, almost thinking about it as like The Void, but at home.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen these like virtual escape rooms that they have that you can sign up for, where like you're basically telling an actor what to do and he's in an environment. Have you seen any of those?
Oh, I've been into a local escape room, but nothing like a virtual one. No, but it sounds amazing and a lot
Yeah, so
easier.
they have this one. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but if you go after virtual escape room, you'll find it. But you're basically speaking to an actor who's on a green screen, and you can kind of tell him what to do in the environment in order to escape the room. So I think that those types of things where you're able to from your home or from like a small studio be able to do these really cool interactive events are
Yeah.
going to be incredibly cool. I'm a huge fan of Adventure Lab. I think their website is just adventure.lab, or you can just Google them. But they have experiences that are available today between VR and desktop that are really fun. And lastly, to your point around streaming, yeah, I think it's obviously kind of seen a tremendous surge. Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, all these different things. I think what I'm excited about is not so much the end point of where people are consuming the content, although obviously I think that's really interesting, but also how people are doing it. So I'm invested in a company called Restream, which basically enables you to record and live stream and simulcast to loads of different places at once, and also add in effects so that you have the ability to have more professional videos. And what I think is fascinating there is like people kind of taking control of their destiny and of their future, and not necessarily being wed to a single platform. You have all these people who are getting paid by Twitch as exclusive streamers to Twitch. You had that with Mixer for a little while. Mixer obviously didn't survive, but you have these different people who are being wed to certain platforms, and I really like the notion. And this company Restream has seen tremendous growth over the last year. There's some exciting announcements coming out for that company as well.
Just on that though, Greg, can you just explain the exact experience so you can if you're streaming a program, you can then restream that into other multiple devices within the house or
No,
within your friends' environments, or?
yeah. So to be clear, it is for people who do live streams. So people who are gamers, people who are who just do video, like this
Yeah.
stream,
Yeah.
for example, religious leaders, entertainers, all these different people who have their own brands and their own following, and people coming to their own destination. They are, again, rather than being wed to a particular network or a particular streaming platform, they're just using Restream and streaming out to all of the platforms and telling everybody kind of that this is where, you know, they can be found on all these different, whatever platform you prefer, go on to that one. And then Restream then as a platform condenses and consolidates all of the chat and all of the interaction that's going on Facebook Live, on YouTube, on Twitch, on all these different platforms, and condenses it into one single pane for the streamer. So yes,
that's a great product.
I'm excited about that. I actually think that they just added Zoom support as well, so we could have done this live using their technology.
Next time, part 2.
And then I think one other area that I'll mention real quick that I think is exciting is the ability to have a more interactive video experience. And so there is no reason, like, for example, when you're watching a sports game on your phone and you see on the bottom the little kind of score graphic, why couldn't you click on that score graphic and get more information on when the goals were scored, et cetera? Why can't you have a more interactive experience that, you know, kind of overlays on top of the video? And so I think that over the next year or 2 years, we're going to start to see HTML5 graphics laid on top of video for a much more immersive, interactive experience with video. I have another company called Video Flow that's working on that.
Yeah, no, look, if you can add, you know, an AI or computer vision experience or touch control, you know, to get player stats and everything like that, I'm all for that. I'm out of sports, interactive TV technology for a number of years and been waiting for something like that to be more engaging for the fans, particularly now when there's no fans in stadiums, right? It's even more poignant.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the future of education for a moment. I think this is obviously a very hot topic for the world, and particularly in the US market where colleges and universities are very expensive. And a lot of international students, there's been obviously a shutdown of certain amount of colleges because, you know, a lot of these colleges were actually in person, right? You know, that's the New York Film Academy, or it could be whatever it is. You were hands-on, right? A lot of those students have gone home, and our research shows that there's about $45 billion spent by international students here every year on tuition and travel and accommodation, which is a hefty number. A lot of the tier 3 universities could go broke, and they're shut down. A lot of the other universities are struggling, of course, with their online offerings. You know, USC just announced today that they're going to drive everybody online, but, you know, they're still unprepared. You've got Harvard charging $50,000 for a course, an online course over Zoom, that your kids can stay in the dorm and they're not allowed to interact with other students, and they get tested every 2 days. So I don't know whether that's going to work, because part of the college scene was to meet a lot of new people and engage in life, and it's your first venture out there outside of the home for a lot of people. I mean, where is the future of education going? And then, you know, what technologies that you have or have seen in the market that could engage this new immersive audience opportunity?
And I wish I had a really good answer for this, but unfortunately I don't. I think, look, the cachet of certain names is not going to go away, right? Harvard is like a Ferrari.
Harvard is Harvard. Yeah, of course.
Harvard, exactly. Cambridge is Cambridge, Yale is Yale. And I'm sure there's enough smart people over there that will figure out how to capitalize on their names, and get people to pay the exorbitant tuition rates that they charge most of the time. It's just so, I think one of the larger challenges is that, yeah, as you pointed out, it's just the schools are so woefully unprepared to be able to handle this. I think it would be, trying to think about kind of the pluses of the situation, like relying more heavily on technology for communication, collaboration, is going to be how people make their money in the future. Companies are, this COVID has really catapulted us into the future of what work is going to look like. So the reliance on, starting to kind of divest from email and really start to lean into other collaboration platforms like Slack and Microsoft Teams and things like that. That is just going to be the future of the workforce. And so I think if kids can start to get a head start on that in college, I think that's a good thing. Now, that said, I don't know whether or not professors are the best people to be teaching. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're equipped to be able to figure out how to do this and what are best practices, and how we can potentially use this as a force function to get people more comfortable with what work is going to look like when they get out. Yeah. So that I think is going to be a really significant challenge.
Some of the comments I've had about the future of education, I'm actually asking a lot of people about this, is that a lot of the professors that I've been even touching on are basically saying to me, well, I actually learned quite a lot from the students, because they have no idea sometimes about social media and interaction in social groups and communities, and let alone VR rooms, right? And immersive education. There's a tradition, of course, worldwide. I'm not talking about the US here, I'm from Australia as well. There's a traditional education model that governments have put in place for 50 to 100 years, right? What I am seeing in the US, though, if you just look at esports, just to silo that for a moment, there are college degrees in esport in about 50 or 100 different colleges last time I looked. It started with one or two, but, that's a good move for the younger generation. It's a good move, like, Full Sail University, the design side of the business. I think the younger generation is very much interested in that, and gaming technologies, because they've grown up playing games. But where I see, an interesting opportunity is immersive education, and how smart glasses or augmented reality or virtual reality could become part of a standard, educational college degree. Do you think that's going to happen? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think, those that are deeply interested in the space and want to perhaps make a career out of it, speaking specifically about VR, AR, I think will be able to do so. And that interest in that area, I think, will probably only grow. But I think in terms of using VR, AR as a real learning solution, back to what I was saying beforehand, I think that most teachers and most schools are woefully unprepared just to switch to online only. Add in VR, AR there, it's just, I just think it's probably unnecessary right now.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's necessary. Maybe this is the best time to do it and just pull the Band-Aid off and really get people kind of immersed in virtual reality and learning how to use it. I don't know, but I suspect, given the shortage of hardware, given the amount of things that companies are contending with, that it probably won't be part of the main course, main kind of coursework
Yeah,
for
curriculum. Yeah.
But maybe, maybe there are certain areas where it makes a lot more sense, and certain sectors will want to focus more in on it. So, maybe you can't go out on archaeological digs with a group anymore, but maybe you can uh, uh, have a few dozen headsets that are in the archaeology department that professors can send out to kids, and kids can then go on virtual archaeological digs, or experience different parts of look at architecture in Rome virtually with the group.
Yeah. I think all of that is absolutely fantastic, and if I was growing up and back at school, I think I'd die to be immersed in all these new technologies, because they've grown up on Twitch, right? Let's face it, they're all watching each other play games. It's a real different world out there from what it was 30 years ago, of course. So look, just to wind up here, what's your tip of the day for an entrepreneur to engage in new technology these days? What advice would you give an entrepreneur to drive a new product to market, or even get investment? Do you have any tips around how you would, what do you say to new entrepreneurs?
I think pick a problem, research that problem very deeply, and then formulate what you think could be a solution. I think looking at the problem and independent of technologies, and finding a solution independent of technologies is the best way to go. I think what I see too often is founders who really love a technology and will, it's kind of a solution in search of a problem. And that's not the right way to go about it. VR and AR, even if you're excited about it, it's not always the answer. So that would be my tip number one. Tip number two would be to start small. And so if you do see a problem, and if you do want to create a business, start in a really small fashion. Don't try to boil the ocean. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of competition. It's going to take time. Figure out a problem. Really try to figure out a solution where you could see how the numbers could make sense. Maybe initially it's not a scalable solution because there's only so many hours in the day. It costs X to do it and you're selling it for Y, but you have to be able to see that the unit economics will work out, and start to solve that problem at a small scale, start to get some money in the door and really understand the unit economics of your business. And if you could show me that you haven't been sitting there for months and months and months on a deck. Rather, you've been sitting there for months and months and months and on actual customer discovery and on actually selling and building. I'd rather have a deck that looks like, it was put together, where there's no graphics and it's just text, and somebody who really understands their business, rather than have it the other way around. So start small, focus on the problem, and really be focused.
Fantastic. Well, Greg, thanks very much for your time today. I love the discussion around all the future and emerging technologies. And I must say, very happy to see you leading the charge in the independent space here and investing in new tech and supporting entrepreneurs. That's part of what we try and bring together is the investment community with entrepreneurs. And so, thanks again for your insights and the tips at the end.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. And it's my Australian saying actually coming out there. Hey, well, you have a great rest of the afternoon, and look forward to catching up again.
Thanks, Matt.